Procrastination isn't really a problem. It's actually a really good opportunity. The problem only occurs when we are unaware of the underlying dynamic at play. If we can recognize consciously that there is a hidden belief at work here, then we can pinpoint what that belief is and move past it. Welcome to The Joy Within. I'm Kyle Greenfield, and I believe that you have the ability to become calm, confident, and happy anytime that you choose. Some days, that's easier than others, but with the right tools and the right way of thinking, we can unlock incredible states of joy, peace, and well-being within us. So visit thejoywithin.org to get started today, so that together we can create a happier and more peaceful world. Hello, and welcome back to the Joy Within's podcast. Today, I want to talk about procrastination and some of the hidden beliefs that might be getting in the way of the actions that you need or want to be taking in your life. First, we'll take a look at the underlying dynamic that's at play whenever we procrastinate, and then I'll share 3 strategies that I use to help me overcome it and kick myself back into action. And by the way, if you don't know me, I'm Kyle Greenfield with The Joy Within. I've been helping people to reduce stress and negative thinking since 2018. I take a mindful approach to help you step back from stress, clarify your focus, and step into higher states of joy, peace, and fulfillment in your work. So when you're ready to stop overthinking and get out of your own way, head over to The Joy Within and schedule a one-on-one call to get started. Before we get into it today, I'm just going to say up front that procrastination can be tricky, because when we procrastinate, we don't usually think in terms of the beliefs that are causing us to do that. We just think, I just don't really want to do this. And then we feel unmotivated. It lowers our energy, and what we don't realize is that when we do that, every time we put something off we know that we should be doing, we're actually chipping away just a little bit at our self-confidence. We're giving in to our fears, and we make it even harder to complete the action in the future. Think about it. Think back to the last time you just didn't want to do something. Whether that was writing a report, going through some financials, dealing with some conflict with a colleague, whatever it is. The first time it came up, you probably didn't really think too hard about it. You probably just didn't feel like it. Like, I just don't want to deal with this today. And if you're like most of us, that was that. So tomorrow rolls around, and you still have to take that same action because you didn't do it, so nothing has progressed. So when it comes up, again, you just think, I just don't want to do this. And again, you're not diving into your beliefs here. You're not necessarily thinking, I don't want to do it because I'm afraid I won't do it well enough, or I'm afraid of what so-and-so will say. At least, you're probably not consciously thinking that. You first just think, I don't feel like it. Except now, in addition to that feeling, you also have a little cringe with it, because you also think, I should have probably done this yesterday. So there's that same initial hesitation, and then there's the start of just beginning to beat yourself up about it, just a little bit. And if you keep this up, if you keep procrastinating, if you keep not doing the thing, then it starts to weigh on you even more. You begin to feel lower and lower energy, because now you know that you're avoiding doing this. So you start to think you must have a good reason for not wanting to do it, and you start to big up the fears that are keeping you stuck. Sound familiar? I know I've fallen into this trap so many times over the years, and it took me forever to finally figure out what was going on behind the scenes. I believe that often we procrastinate whenever there's a hidden negative belief that's holding us back. That could be doubt or fear of some sort, and the perceived pain or the risk of pain is greater than the perceived benefit of taking the action. So if you have to have a difficult talk with a colleague, let's say, then you might unconsciously play up how hard that conversation will be. You'll start thinking about all of the things that could go wrong, and you'll start to play down the benefits that could result. You don't connect having the tough conversation to resolving the underlying issue with that person. Instead, you unconsciously think something like, I have to have this painful conversation, and it probably won't even work. So it's all pain and no benefit. Again, this is all happening unconsciously. On the surface, it just feels like not wanting to do it. So you begin to justify your inaction. You tell yourself you're just having a slow day. You just feel a bit off. Those reasons are indications that you have some belief that is holding you back. But here's the thing, is procrastination isn't really a problem. It's actually a really good opportunity. The problem only occurs when we are unaware of the underlying dynamic at play. If we can recognize consciously that there is a hidden belief at work here, then we can pinpoint what that belief is and move past it. And we'll end up feeling better because we'll have more energy and we'll be able to just get the job done, then feel confident and proud because of what we've done. So that core dynamic comes down to the pleasure-pain principle. We will naturally move towards pleasure and away from pain. But in the modern world, this dynamic is almost always psychological. Chances are sitting down to get some work done isn't actually going to cause that much physical pain. I mean, a lion's not going to come jump out and eat you. It's really not life-threatening. But often there is an inner story, an inner turmoil that makes it feel just as risky. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. We procrastinate in an attempt to avoid that inner struggle. But here's the kicker, is procrastination actually strengthens that turmoil rather than diminishes it. Because when we procrastinate, we still have the original fear or negative belief. It hasn't gone away. Plus, we start beating ourselves up for not taking action. So it's lose-lose. So when I said earlier that we big up the short-term pain of taking the action and we play down the benefit that will result from it, we're not actually seeing the full picture. We tend to only consider the risk-reward of the action, and we ignore the underlying beliefs behind that action. So we don't realize that the bigger pain comes not from having that conversation or doing that report, but from the act of procrastinating. And that pain has very little to do with the action itself. So if we can understand that there's a hidden negative belief here driving us to feel pain, and we procrastinate in an attempt to avoid that pain, then we can see how procrastination causes us more pain than actually just getting on with it. And so when we think in this way, the path out becomes clearer, because we can see that if we can remove that negative belief, the source of our original pain, then we would have no reason to procrastinate at all, because the pull towards pleasure, in this case reaching our goal, would just be unimpeded. We'd have nothing stopping us. Now, the pleasure-pain principle is a two-sided coin, so you actually don't have to eliminate the pain in order to motivate yourself to action. You could also overcome procrastination by strengthening the pull towards that pleasure or towards a sense of empowerment. If the carrot is big enough, you'll endure a few whacks from the stick in order to get it. This is what people often do when they try to get motivated or psych themselves into something. And this works. There is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is built around it. But the problem is, it is usually short-lived. When you psych yourself into action, you sprint forward, but then the next time that the same situation arises or something very similar arises, then you will still feel stuck. You'll have to go through the entire process again. And often, psyching yourself up to it starts to get harder and harder. It takes more and more effort to overcome that drag of, I don't want to do this. So I believe that until you deal with the underlying obstacle, that root negative belief or fear that you have, then you'll just keep getting stuck. So motivation might be faster in the moment, but it is temporary because it doesn't deal with the cause of the problem. So that's what I think is happening behind the scenes whenever we procrastinate. So then the question becomes, well, how can we apply this? How can we use it in order to stop procrastinating? Well, I have a few strategies that I've found that work really, really well. And no matter what the situation I'm dealing with, I find that I can use at least one of these to help kick me back into action. Hey guys, so I don't run outside ads or get sponsors for the podcast, which means I rely on you to help keep it going. The best way you can do that is to help spread the word. Leave a 5-star review, tell your friends, share it on social. I think we all know people who are struggling, and I know issues like stress and negativity can be hard to talk about, which makes sharing a link a really easy way to connect and tell someone you care. And if you find the podcast helpful, I promise you they will too. So do me a quick favor and think of 3 people you know who would benefit from this podcast and send them a link. That's it. Now, back to the show. So first, there is a question that I like to ask whenever I'm procrastinating, which is, what must I believe in order to be avoiding this thing? So if you ask this honestly, it can be really sobering. It will put you right up against the very thing that you're secretly trying to avoid. And it helps you see that it's not the action that you dread. It's the unconscious belief behind that action. So think about it. What must I believe in order to be avoiding this task, or this action, or this person? Now, often, the answer will boil down to one of the basic fears. So fear of failure, rejection, success, things like that. But I think it helps to get into the specific manifestation of that fear that's at play right now. Because it's easier to knock down one specific version of it, one specific false belief, than to try to tackle a global underlying fear of failure, let's say. Let me give you an example. And if you run a business, then maybe you can relate to this. I've been a business owner for almost 20 years now. And one of the things that I just can never seem to get past is that I always struggle to do cold outreach, to just randomly email or call people or businesses that I have no connection to whatsoever, and just say, hey, let's do a partnership, or an interview, or whatever it is. Whenever it comes up, I try to avoid it because it's just not the type of person that I see myself as. And yet sometimes I still have to do it. So at one point, this was back when I was running a marketing agency, I knew that I had to do some cold outreach. And I spent an entire year telling myself that I was going to start. And every day I would find some excuse to avoid it. I just didn't feel like it today, or something else came up and it's not the most important thing right now. And day after day, I would just keep putting it off, keep procrastinating. And as I did that, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger in my mind. But when I finally started applying this process, when I started asking, what must I believe in order to be avoiding this? Then I started to make headway. And for me, at the time, broadly speaking, it was a fear of rejection. But that by itself is not very helpful. It's much more helpful to say, you know what? I don't believe this will work. I think it will be a waste of time. And if I do it, I'll be worse off because it will be painful. I don't want to do it. It'll be tiring. It'll be frustrating. It'll be draining. It'll be time consuming. And I'll still be exactly where I am now. So it was all pain with no benefit. And identifying this belief was actually really, really helpful. Because once I identified it, I could start to work with it, rather than have it lurking ominously somewhere in my subconscious mind. Often, the way the belief presents itself will guide you towards the process of resolving it. So in this case, I didn't think the strategy would work. Great. That's something specific I can work with. Now that that's out in the open, I can reconsider it. I can find whatever information I need to either strengthen my belief that yes, this strategy works, which in doing so improves that pull towards pleasure that we talked about before. Or I can decide, you know what? There are better uses of my time, and I can let the action go and move forward without the regret and without the pain and suffering that's associated with it. The second strategy I can use is to change the frame. So I can see if there's a way of peering around the negative belief, so to speak, or a way of looking at the action from a different angle. So to use that same cold outreach example, I can think, you know what? Fear that this won't work? Yes, I do have strong reasons to believe that this one person I'm about to contact won't be interested. This one call will probably be a waste of time. So to get past that, I can think about how I can change my perspective without trying to fight against that underlying belief. I might think, okay, calling one person is probably useless, but if I call 100 people, or 1,000, or 10,000, then is that still true? It's kind of like pushing up the line of scrimmage so that the negative belief has to retreat. And this strategy of reframing your perspective is particularly powerful whenever it helps you to relieve pressure and detach from any one specific outcome. So it's no longer about me making this one call. It's about the process I'm going through to make many calls. If you can get to the point where you can say genuinely, you know what? I don't even care what the result is. Just by taking the action, I will hone this skill, or improve my character, or whatever it is in the situation that you're in. Then you will no longer have that resistance, and the instinct to procrastinate will disappear. And that leads into the third strategy that I often use, which is whenever I catch myself procrastinating, I try to see if I can flip into the mode of just practicing. I think, I'm just testing this out. I'm just going to try it and see what happens. If you're doing a project or a report of some sort, maybe it's, this isn't the real report. This is just practice. This is just the first draft. Psychologically, that helps to get you out of your own way because it stops all of those stories about needing it to be perfect, needing something specific to happen as a result. Those stories, the need for the action to work in some specific way, triggers your fears about it not working. And that's why we procrastinate, in order to avoid facing those fears. So if we can trick ourselves into thinking that we're just practicing, that doing the thing is not really doing the thing, that it doesn't count in some way, then our ego mind will drop back. We'll be more likely to take action. And 9 times out of 10, the fear just goes away. Because it wasn't really a big deal in the first place. It was only our inner stories, our constant obsessing about it, that made it seem like it was a bigger deal than it was. Not only that, but if we can shift into that mode of practicing, or of learning, then it has the added benefit that we start to attach more pleasure to the action, because we often like learning. We tend to like getting better at things. So imagining that we're just practicing, we're just trying it out, just learning, allows us to simultaneously remove that perceived pain of failure and attach a stronger positive benefit to the action. And some form of this can usually work even when you're dealing with what appear to be one-off actions. So say you have to have that tough conversation with a colleague. That's not something you need to practice. You only do it once. But you could take the pressure off in the same way by saying, I just need to learn what this other person thinks. I just need to learn why they said whatever it was that they said that upset me, or why they're acting in the way that they are. So maybe instead of practicing, you think in terms of learning, of gaining understanding about that person. Like I said, I think at least one of these 3 strategies can be applied to most of the different types of situations that we face. And I think all of them help to shift the balance between pain and pleasure that exists within the psyche. There are practical ways that I use to help identify and overcome those hidden negative beliefs, because that pain-pleasure balance is entirely dependent on the stories that you tell yourself, the meaning you assign to the action. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not a one-and-done solution. We're all human. We all have thousands of negative beliefs that we can unravel. And I'm not saying that I don't have days when I just don't feel like doing something. But since I've started asking myself questions in this way, the reasons that I might procrastinate have shifted. Procrastination starts to feel more like knowing that I need to rest and recenter, rather than actively trying to avoid the situation that I'm in. And when I do catch myself procrastinating and ask this question, I find that I can shift very rapidly to actually wanting to do the task that previously I've been trying to avoid. Because when I remove that resistance, I just flow. That pull of the positive, empowered state begins to take over, and that is a wonderful place to be. So I really hope you take these 3 strategies and you start to apply them the next time that you feel that urge to procrastinate. I have found them to be incredibly helpful, and I really hope you do as well. If you want to go deeper, if you want to start applying these ideas to be able to shift into a better and more centered state, then I also want to share a simple 5-step process that I use. And you can find that over at thejoywithin.org/5steps, and I'll include a link below as well. It's a free guide that walks you through the simple process that I use for pretty much any stress or negativity that I face. And I find it really helps when I'm stuck procrastinating, just unable to get myself moving, because it helps me to step back, to recenter, and to focus on the one next step I need to take right now in order to move forward. So that's at thejoywithin.org/5steps. So that's it for today. If you found today's episode helpful, please leave a 5-star review and also share the podcast with a friend. If you find it helpful, they will too. So that said, know that I love you and I appreciate you wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to The Joy Within. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do what you can to spread the word. I believe that we all deserve to feel calm, confident, and happy literally every single day. But with everything that's going on in the world, we need to work together to remind ourselves of that in as many little ways as we can. So please, pass this along to the people you care about. Email a friend, share it on social, do whatever feels right for you, so that hopefully, together, we can create a little more peace in our crazy modern world.